Hello and welcome to episode 104 of Driver Seat Blog Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. At the time of production, I'm in the middle of some things I really can't explain, and also I work outside in a negative wind chill. So I'm low on material and even lower on time and energy, so I'm going to take a snow day. Snow day. Yeah, no racing, no wrestling, just fluff this week. Because I got three stories that I want to talk about. Two of them are funny, and one is more of a serious rant. Let's start with this story, which I didn't even know until a couple days ago. The extradition of Nicholas Alaverdian. Now, Nicholas Alaverdian is also known as Nicholas Rossi, Nicholas Alaverdian Rossi, Nicholas Edward Rossi, Nicholas Alaverdian Rossi with a dash, Nicholas Allen, Nicholas Brown, Nicholas Brown Knight, Arthur Brown, and Arthur Knight. He's a convicted sex offender, and I seriously haven't changed my gamer tag on Steam as many times as this guy has changed names. But let me set up the current part of the story, courtesy of Wikipedia, link in the description. So he's been charged with a number of sexual assaults. So in January 2020, Alaverdian reported that he had been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. He provided this information to a number of media organizations, though the Providence Journal stated that Alaverdian insisted that they report his illness. A person claiming to be Alaverdian's widow later stated that his illness lasted for quote-unquote months and that his quote-unquote heart disease and quote-unquote heart attacks. According to his family in his obituary, Alaverdian succumbed to the disease on February 29th, 2020. The person claiming to be his widow stated that Alaverdian would be cremated and his remains scattered at sea. In reality, Alaverdian left the United States, settling in South Bristol, England, with a woman called Miranda Knight. According to Miranda's brother, Alaverdian dated Miranda in 2019 and they were married in early 2020. None of Alaverdian's family or friends were present at the ceremony. Alaverdian never spoke about his family and told Miranda he was from Dublin, Ireland, and working in online marketing and public relations. In February 2020, Alaverdian would go on to fake his death to the American media, as I just discussed. Well, in 2021, Alaverdian and Miranda moved to Glasgow, Scotland. There, he claimed to be a professor teaching at the nearby University of Glasgow. I don't know how you would lie about something that could be so easily verified, but we'll get to that later on in this podcast. Going back to the Wikipedia article, quote, according to a neighbor in Glasgow, Alaverdian said he was creating a textbook on religious education for schools, used an English accent, even though he claimed to be Irish, had blonde hair and a mustache. His neighbor also remarked that, quote, for someone who was on the run, he really liked to draw attention to himself. So on July 23rd, 2022, the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office filed charges against Alaverdian and issued a no-bail warrant for his arrest. Now, on December 13, 2021, Alaverdian was arrested at Queen's University Hospital, Glasgow, with regards to the previously mentioned case in Utah in 2008, amongst other alleged crimes. He was receiving treatment for COVID-19 under the name Arthur Knight. Alaverdian was identified by observation of his tattoos and his fingerprints, which police matched for records for Rossi. Scarring on one arm suggested that Alaverdian had tried to remove one of the tattoos. On December 23rd, 2021, he participated in a bail hearing by video link from the hospital, which resulted in him being granted bail. According to prosecutor Jennifer Johnson, the court expected him to remain in the hospital for weeks, but Alaverdian left the hospital the day after he made bail. Johnson also said that Alaverdian had attempted to leave the hospital via private taxi company, and that even before the bail hearing he had, quote, attempted to source a private ambulance and that he tried to source oxygen. So, on January 12, 2022, his arrest was publicized, but it was confirmed by the Rhode Island State Police. Rhode Island State Police Representative Roman Hull, who served as a police officer for 34 years, reacted to Alaverdian's arrest by stating, I've come across a lot of dishonest people in my profession, but I've never come across someone who would fake his own death. Hull additionally lamented that this setback efforts to reform his efforts to reform the DCYF, because he was Alaverdian was apparently, and he was apparently abandoned as a child and was suffered some kind of assault or some form of abuse at on a foster home, and he was trying to change the system. But again, he's a pathological liar, so take it with a grain of salt. So he was extradited back to the U.S. on January 5th. Now, while this situation is indeed awful, there is one bright spot. Go look at the interview he did with Dateline. I wish I could make this kind of stuff up, because in a bizarre interview with Alaverdian conducted by Dateline, he is seen using an oxygen mask, badly pretending to be sick, and speaking in the most obvious American doing a British accent that I've ever heard. Now, I can't play the audio or video for copyright reasons, but there is a link in the description. Now, I talked about Boogie2928's job interview some time ago, and like that, if this was written as a comedy scene in an SNL sketch, it would be hilarious. It isn't. This is real life. Alaverian swears up and down he was an Irish orphan named Arthur Knight, and he claimed to be a professor teaching at the University of Glasgow, and he was attempting to create a textbook on religious schools. Now, when asked about the DNA and tattoo and fingerprints, it's crazy because he honestly claims, look this up, I'm not making this up, he claims that somebody in the hospital, when he was in a coma, tattooed him with the same tattoos as Nicholas Alaverdian. It's a tough name to say. And that somebody in the hospital just sent his DNA to Utah so that he could be, so they could say that they have a DNA match. Now, this raises a lot of questions. Now, again, why would a nurse or any hospital worker tattoo very specific tattoos onto a comatose individual and then try to sand one off to make it look like he tried to remove it himself? Why would a random hospital worker in Scotland send a random DNA sample to Utah to frame this man? I mean, am I the only one who thinks that this story has more BS than a cow pasture? He claims that he's a random guy who's never hurt anybody, yet you have fingerprints, tattoos, and DNA that connect you to the crime. He is so full of it. He's desperately flailing to save his own life, and it's not going to work because now he's back, he's facing charges, he's going away for a long time. You know what? Good. Good. He's a creep. He deserves the worst that prison has. He deserves the worst that prison has to offer, and I hope he goes there for a good long time. And again, the thing about this story is, it sounds like it was fiction. But if you wrote it as fiction, no one would buy it. Even if you wrote this as like a comedy parody of a crime thriller, like a Leslie Nielsen style parody, no one would buy it. But as a real life story, it's amazing. It's amazing. This guy is nuttier than a planter's factory. He screwed his entire life up, and now he's going to pay dearly for it, and he has no one to blame but himself. Well, with the first funny part of this podcast out of the way, we're going to get to the serious rant next. I'll be right back. Welcome back. We're going to get a little bit controversial here right now. And if you are the kind of person who believes that every life is sacred and every person deserves a chance, click off now. Because I'd like to discuss something that's been bothering me for some time. It's another case of people just not being able to take responsibility for their own lives. And it also has a couple of unpopular opinions that I have, but we'll get to those in a little bit. Now, I don't think it would be an overstatement to state that there is a massive drug and opiate problem in North America. Too many people are addicted to drugs. Many can't escape but want to, but then there are also who just don't want to escape. Now, as such, there is a significant overdose problem in the US, and the tool that is used to save many overdose victims is called Narcan or naloxone. Now, Narcan is a very costly solution, and many small towns are having trouble dealing with expenses related to overdose. A few years ago, there was a city councilman who stirred up controversy because in one of these towns, he proposed a new law stating that if you suffer more than 2 overdoses, and the ENT have to use Narcan to save you, you have to pay the city back, and if you can't or won't, the ambulances won't come for any more overdoses. This riled a lot of people up, and in the end, it actually became somewhat of a non-issue because instead of overdosing on opiates, they began overdosing on meth. So there you go. Well, the latest trend that people are encouraging in relation to this is the idea that the average Joe Schmo on the street should carry a dose or multiple doses of Narcan. Now, the theory here is that if you are somewhere and somebody suffers an overdose, you can give them some Narcan and help save their lives. Many states, and even Canada, have rules allowing or even encouraging this trend. My hometown of Evanston, Illinois, recently implemented a series of boxes where you can collect Narcan kits for free. Now, these new policies also allow the users to escape drug charges with a direct result of being treated for an overdose. And you know what? I'm sick of this. This is just another case of it takes a village. Well, I don't want to be a part of your village. I am sick and tired of this it's part of a village bullshit. I am not going to go out of my way, and I'm tired of being expected to go out of my way to expect to help solve people's lives and help fix problems I myself did not cause. If I make a mistake, I will take responsibility for it. I will fix it myself. But if I'm not responsible for the problem, why am I, as a person, responsible for your problems? Don't expect me to solve them for you. And as I said, Evanston has some of these free kits available in a lot of areas. These kits cost about $45 each, and depending on what you're overdosing on, more than one may be needed. What the hell? These idiots actually think I'm supposed to spend $90, if not more, of my own money out of my own pocket because other people can't control themselves. How is that right? How is that right? And you know what? Here's why I feel this way. And let me ask you this question. What happens after you give them the Narcan? Well, most of these people go back to doing their drugs and won't change. Again, many are not capable of stopping on their own, but many of them just don't want to. They can't change, and many of them don't want to. You're enabling them. I was reading an article in researching this where they were interviewing a small town police force, and they were talking about the amount of Narcan, and the cops said like in 1 month-long period, someone got Narcan like 15 times or something like that. You're just enabling them at that point. Do you honestly think they're going to magically wake up, appreciate their new lease on life, and go to rehab? No. This is not a Disney movie. They're just going to go back to their old habits. I've dealt with addiction in my friends and family. I understand that addictions can be difficult to break. But at the same time, there just gets to be a point where you just have to wonder why you're wasting time and effort and resources. And I say this because nobody can save you in the real world. I've dealt with my own mental health issues. I've dealt with mental health issues with my family and friends. I've seen addiction. Nobody is going to save you. And that's a spoonful of reality and people don't want to accept. Nobody can save you if you don't want to save yourself. If you are not making the effort to save yourself, nobody else can save you. This is not a Disney movie. This is real life. Where's the personal responsibility here? Again, why is it my job or the job of anybody else to save you. When is it my job to protect you from yourself? Why is it anyone else's job to protect you from yourself? And we've all heard the old saying, everyone has a purpose in life. Some people's purpose in life is to be an example for others. I've also learned over the years that second chances are a privilege, not a right. There are people out there who get second chances and who go out of their way to make the most of it and get better. And that's all I ask of you. Try to get better. If you're making a concerted effort, you're going through treatment, you're doing counseling, you're working to get yourself better, and then you suffer a setback, that's one thing. If you're making a concerted effort and you suffer a setback, I will support you because you're trying to get better. Others will never change. They might say they want to change, but they don't really want to. They want you to feel sympathy for them and put up with their crap. That's just how it works. These people are their own worst enemy, and you are your own worst enemy in life sometimes. Like the person who is a good person and is responsible and then gets hit by a car and is paralyzed from the waist down, I feel bad for them. The person who just can't get off the drugs because they like it too much, no sympathy. I don't want to be a part of your village, as I said before. Some of these people can't be saved. And some of these people really shouldn't be saved. Because again, if you are overdosing on an average of like once a week, why should we waste our time on you? Why should we waste our resources on you? We shouldn't. Some people are never going to change, and some people you shouldn't waste the effort on. Watch Hoarders if you don't believe me. Watch Addiction if you don't believe me. Watch Beyond Scared Straight if you don't believe me. If you get a chance and you make the most of it and you suffer a setback, that's one thing. If you're never going to change and nobody's going to convince you to change, goodbye. And with these people, again, they will find out the hard way that there are no second chances and they have nobody to blame but yourself. And while this might sound cruel, and even I do admit that it's cruel, it might sound cruel. Excuse me. Real life is real life. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. Other times people ruin their own lives and they can't accept their own faults. So I ask the question again. Why should the rest of us go out of their way to save people who can't save themselves? Where's the personal responsibility here? The world can't save you, so you have to change. And if you don't want to change, your fate is your problem and not ours. With that, I'm going to take my second break as I discuss the downfall of a certain video game quote-unquote icon. I'll be right back. So I'm back. Now I've been waiting for this whole thing to play out before I talked about this, and since certain things have happened, now I can. Let's discuss Billy Mitchell. Billy Mitchell, the self-proclaimed video game player of the century, has been exiled from the video game record community, and his downfall was glorious and it was so entertaining. Now before we start, there are thousands of little minute details in the Billy Mitchell story. I can't cover them all. This video would be about 4 to 5 to 6 hours long, so this is a summation of the best parts. So Billy Mitchell grew up a pinball player and eventually turned his focus to arcade video games, where he claimed to have set world record scores on Pac-Man, Burger Time, and most infamously Donkey Kong. Key words here. He claimed. His scores were submitted to the Old Twin Galaxies website, which is the video game record website, which was run by Walter Day, a detail that will be very important into how all of this plays out, so keep it in the back of your mind. Now, he was the subject of articles, documentaries, as well as criticism and speculation. And the sequence of events that would start his downfall began in 2014. Now, in March of that year, Jace Hall bought and took over Twin Galaxies from Walter Day. He soon realized that there were a lot of cheated scores accepted as records, and Hall decided that he was going to clean up the system in records and implemented a system where users could challenge the authenticity of record scores. Now, Mitchell was the big target, but like a lot of these things, a smaller target was needed to test the system, and here we enter and we meet player number 2, Todd Rogers. Now, I discussed this story when it first broke on the Driver's Seat blog, back when it was just a blog and not a podcast. I'm going to read exactly what I wrote. We'll link it in the description. So, released in 1980 for the Atari 2600, Dragster was released by Activision. Depending on who you ask, it may or may not be the first third-party game in video game history. I think it isn't, but the premise is that you are racing a dragster, and to play as follows. You take the control of the dragster, you hold the button and move the joystick to shift gears, and you're competing for a low elapsed time. There are professional video gamers out there who have made a career out of setting video game records. These records are kept on a site called Twin Galaxies. The oldest video game record was in Dragster, where Todd Rogers earned a 5.51 ET after he, quote, started the race in second gear, and there is video footage of him saying this in existence. Now, I say it was the oldest record in video game history because last month it emerged that a 5.51 ET on Dragster was impossible. After examining the coding and using various methods, it was determined that the lowest possible score to get on Dragster was a 5.57, and Rogers' claim of starting the race in second gear was also proven to be impossible. Now, this revelation wound up opening the floodgates, and all of Todd Rogers' records were examined. His records were either impossible high or impossible to begin with. After this news broke, Twin Galaxies, under pressure, moved all of Rogers' records and banned him from the site for life. His 1,700 video game records and his Guinness World Records were all lost. He's been exposed for the fraud that he is. Well, the reason that Rogers was able to get away with this for so long is because he was a quote-unquote referee who was supposed to have an independent third person input his scores. The problem is, Rogers' referee was a man by the name of Ron Corcoran, who was in Rogers' pocket, and Rogers added his own scores to Twin Galaxies, even though it specifically forbids him to do so. Well, as I said, Rogers was banned for life from Twin Galaxies and lost all of his 1,700 plus world records. Well, Rogers was the small target. Billy Mitchell was the big target. His status in the video game community ranged from not very well liked to outright hated, and multiple people have accused him of cheating. Now, this fire was very much fueled when Mitchell showed off his world record-breaking scores, and this is what led to his downfall. Now, for those of you who don't know, a critical detail to this story is that to claim a world record score on any old arcade game, you have to play on original, unmodified equipment. Okay? Original, unmodified equipment. I'm repeating it because it's very, very critical to how this story plays out. What that basically means is you have to have access to an original Donkey Kong arcade machine and set the record on that. Now, there are various ways to record footage using an original unmodified machine, but it's clear that Billy Mitchell didn't do that. In the tapes that Mitchell used to submit its scores, not only does it show clear evidence of manipulation, as there were obvious edits and no audio, and the reason that this was because he used an emulator known as MAME, which used to stand for Multiple Arcade Machine Emulator. Using this software and some editing tips, he created his high scores. And there's a lot of little minute details about his guilt. There is a very, very interesting website detailing all the evidence against Billy Mitchell. I did that because it's way too long to get into here. Now, after creating this fake evidence, he submitted it to Walter Day's Twin Galaxies, accepted them, and gave him world record status. Well, how could this work with a website like Twin Galaxies, I hear you ask? Well, as it turns out, when it comes to Twin Galaxies, Mitchell was no ordinary gamer. He was part owner. of Twin Galaxies. Now, there is a plethora of evidence to support this accusation, but Walter Day was willing to let Mitchell have his glory in exchange for serious financial support until Jace Hall purchased Twin Galaxies. Now, with Mitchell completely out of the picture, Hall quickly realized how bad the situation was and how obviously the cheating was. So on April 12th, 2018, after a very lengthy investigation, Mitchell was banned for life from Twin Galaxies, had all of his records stripped of him, and was shown to be the obvious cheater that he was. Mitchell, however, wasn't going to go down quietly. This is a guy who sued Cartoon Network for making fun of him and comprehensively got his ass kicked. So what does he do? He files a lawsuit against Twin Galaxies as well as YouTuber Carl Jobst. As a result of this case, we got to see how arrogant and delusional Mitchell really is. During his depositions, he lied numerous times, sometimes about things that were easily disproven, and at least one case where the reason he lied, I don't even understand why you would lie about something like this. Like, the one really weird lie in this story is that he was asked if he was a director for the Video Game Hall of Fame, which is basically just all the old school guys got together, founded their own museum, and gave each other awards. They asked him if he was on the board. He categorically denied this. When they were showing him pictures of the website stating he is in fact a director, he literally said, "It doesn't matter if they say it, I'm not a director." I'm like, and of all the stuff that you can lie about in certain situations, this one baffles me. Why would you lie about something that really isn't pertinent to the case as much as other details that he's lied about? It's just weird. So, on his so-called score of 1,050,200 points that was supposedly set at a mortgage brokers convention in Orlando on July 13th or 14th, there seems to be some disagreement on the date. He claimed that, it was claimed, I don't want to say that he claimed, I think it was someone within his camp claimed, that there was a very specific way to record footage from an arcade machine without modifying it significantly. Well, in the discussion of how the mortgage broker's score was originally achieved, he claimed that he had taken an original Donkey Kong PCB or printed circuit board and attached something to record his attempt, thus modifying the board. And I repeat, a world record for Donkey Kong could only be achieved on original, unmodified hardware. Now, if this sounds dumb, you're right. But it was then claimed that he then sent this now modified board to Nintendo, who, for reasons that I can't even begin to understand, supposedly claimed this and certified it as unmodified after the event. Now, even if you're dumb enough to believe this story, why would you? It's a moot point at best. Because, as you can imagine, there were photographs taken of Mitchell at the event. Mitchell posed with a machine for some of these photos. In these photos, the machine has been modified with a brand new joystick, which is possibly an 8-way stick. See, the traditional Donkey Kong machines have a short stick with a black ball, and it can only go up, down, left, and right. This new stick is a larger red stick, which may or may not be an 8-way. I'm not saying for sure that it is. I'm not saying for sure that it isn't. And an 8-way stick allows for movements and actions that are traditionally not possible with a traditional 4-way stick. And in a moment of sheer, I don't even know how he got tricked into confirming that this was not even tricked, but he confirmed that this was the machine he used, red stick and all. Now, both Carl Jobst and Twin Galaxies fought back, and it was announced last week that there was a settlement had been reached in the case between Twin Galaxies and Mitchell. And one misunderstood detail was that Mitchell's Donkey Kong scores appear under what is now called the original TG Historical Database section, which is basically an archive of the original Twin Galaxies site. What people seem to be overlooking is that he's still not a record holder. He's still banned for life from uploading scores, and nobody is going to mourn his loss. And it even with all of the completely and totally obvious cheating that happened here, and how he's delusional, and how he's arrogant, and how everybody pretty much hates him, and how he's a clown and nobody respects him, he still has supporters. Granted, they're few and just as delusional as he is. Two such entities are Isaiah Triforce Johnson, who is a real piece of work himself, and Robert Childs. Now, both of these two have made multiple public appearances in videos defending Mitchell. Triforce Johnson is also well known for defending Todd Rogers. Yet it's interesting that neither one were willing to testify on Billy Mitchell's behalf in the deposition. Now, Triforce has also been accused of faking evidence in the form of 2 plaques Mitchell claimed to have gotten as, quote, video game player of the century. And outside of those two, really, the group of defenders he has is shrinking to a very small group. Dedicated, but small. Mitchell has been focusing on his family's restaurant and hot sauce business, which I think is a good move because he is dead as a gamer. No video game players or video game companies want to associate with this guy, and that's pretty obvious. He is his own worst enemy, and he's getting what he's deserving, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I don't feel bad for making fun of him. So, with that, the snow day officially comes to an end. I'll be back with a regular episode next week. I hope. I'm Dave Frostley. If you like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.